Chemical City Double Reeds is a full-service double reed shop specializing in the sale of instruments, cane, accessories, and sheet music. Double Reed Dish listeners can enjoy free shipping with code DRDISH, all caps, no spaces. Visit them in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, or online at chemicalcityreeds.com.
Hey, oboists! Have you ever found it difficult to sort out when and how to find a new oboe or English horn? Oboe Chicago streamlines the process, providing personal and professional consultation and a large selection of lovely instruments. The process feels comfortable and thorough. Selection includes F. Fleuret of Paris, Howarth of London, Covey oboes, and Fox products. For a current listing of Oboe Chicago's selection, please visit www.oboechicago.com. For a credit of $100 toward shipping, mention Double Reed Dish when you call or email Shauna.
Hi, I'm Galit Kaunitz.
And I'm Jackie Wilson, and you're listening to Double Reed Dish,
a podcast for oboists,
bassoonists,
and the people who love them.
Howdy, partner.
Hey there, you little girl.
Get along, little doggy. I don't know what that was. How are you?
Fine, I'm feeling a little slap happy, to be perfectly honest with you. It's like that time of the semester, I feel like I'm wearing a clown suit and a cowboy hat and I'm spinning plates.
Wait, what's slap happy?
You've never heard of slap happy?
I mean, maybe I have, but its
like
meaning is vague to me, I guess.
It's like when you're tired, but you're also hysterical.
Oh, okay.
It's like out of control. Like things are too funny and you're not making any sense.
Like a delirium.
Yes!
A fatigue.
It's a delirium. That's exactly what that
delirium. Okay. Well, we love that. Maybe playing a game is good for your slap happy attitude right now.
Okay. You know what? I'm into it.
So tell the people what we're doing for today's dish.
We are playing Would You Rather.
Have we done this before?
I feel like we might have, but this one is so good, I don't even care.
I feel like maybe in like the height of quarantine, you know, when we did those things on social media to kind of let people have fun, but we didn't necessarily talk about them on the podcast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I wonder if there may have been a would you rather game. But yeah, so we came up with these would you rather questions.
You're being very generous saying we, by the way. You came up with these would you rather questions.
Well, listen, to be fair, we are having to stockpile some episodes, as I've referred to before, because I'm going on vacation for like a month. So I feel like I should have to share the brunt of the organizational responsibilities because I'm going to check out of my life for like 3 weeks. So I'm okay. I'm slap happy to take it on, you know. So the first question is, would you rather have the ability to make perfect reads or have the ability to play without getting nervous? What do you say, Galit?
Okay, I'm going to go 100% make perfect reads.
Really?
Yes, because number one, having a perfect read makes me less nervous. And number two, nervous can actually be good for a performance.
Well, see, I'm the opposite. I would rather have the ability to play without getting nervous because if you're not nervous, who cares? Like, if you have a bad read, you don't care about that because you're not feeling nervous.
Not being nervous takes away all emotion.
Also, I feel like the caveat of would you rather, it's just imperfect read. So that's not like an F failure of a read. That could be like a 98%.
Yeah, but depending on the repertoire, a 98% of a read is still not good enough.
But I'm not worried about that because I'm not getting nervous. Well, for the record, our wonderful listeners by far agreed with you.
Thank you.
74% said perfect reads, 26% agreed with me, the few and the proud.
I just love being right. Okay, Jackie, would you rather Have the ability to play as fast as possible or have the ability to play as long as possible?
I don't know. I'm a little bit torn. Listen, the bassoon does not have the resistance level of the oboe. Like, I feel like if I was an oboist, the answer would be very clear.
It
Y'all's
is very
instrument is
clear to
like
me.
blowing into a closed fist. So if I was an oboe player, I'd say endurance is the obvious issue. On the bassoon, I don't know, especially I love some flash and trash. So maybe, and we've got all that thumb stuff going on that
Yeah.
can get in the way. So
Got some
maybe
Beethoven 4.
that Figaro, so much of our life is just like, okay, how fast? So yeah, final answer, technique.
Mine's definitely going to be endurance because I don't like playing into a closed fist. If I had easy endurance, if that were not a challenge for me, I could play so much more repertoire.
Hmm.
You have to be so strategic about it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because Instagram gives us a breakdown of 50-50 on the results.
Mm.
However, I can see that technique got 101 votes, endurance 103. So technically, endurance is the winner, though this is pretty much a
Okay.
50-50 split.
That's cool.
I would be so interested in the breakdown on instrument, although I can
Mhm.
see that there are some oboe-oriented usernames that did choose technique. So
Maybe those people really love Pasculi. I'm not judging. I'm just saying.
it's true. It's true. Okay, would you rather? This is a bit sadistic of a question I came up with,
Yeah.
I guess. Would you rather have to play with chapped lips or with a headache?
Chapped lips every day of the week.
Why?
Well, I can't stand a headache. I'm such a baby. Also, the back pressure on the oboe. If I have a headache, and I'm playing the oboe, I feel like I'm dying.
I agree. Headache as well. Or wait, I would not want to play with a headache and would prefer
Mhm.
chapped lips because I find chapped lips like maybe it's a little painful, but mostly it's just that it feels weird and
Yeah.
what comes out sounds normal. It's
Yeah.
just like, ugh, I hate this. Like it gets to that point in like late fall where there's like the thick layer of
Uh-huh.
skin and it,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
And you feel so self-conscious. You're like, everyone's
Hmm.
looking at my
It
lips.
doesn't feel normal. But yeah, to play with a headache, a lot of times I just won't.
Hmm. If I have a choice, I won't.
Yeah, like I could practice an extra hour or I could acknowledge I have a headache and not.
I could just wait for the ibuprofen to kick in and then come back to it later.
1000%. And
Mhm.
the listeners agree with us. 69% to 31% would choose to play with chapped lips over a headache.
If they were flutes, though, it would be different, I think. I think a flutist would rather play with a headache.
Well, we don't care what they think.
Get out of here, flute. Would you rather have to sight read a concert or have to play a concert on someone else's reads?
See, okay, here's Trivial Pursuit about me. As you all may have guessed at this time, I'm very type A. I'm very organized. I'm not afraid of work. And so I will do what it takes to learn what I need to learn. I can learn pretty much anything. I'm a slow practicer. Having said that, my Achilles heel is sight reading. I can't sight read to save my life. I fall on my face. I don't know if it has to do with like my brain and I just can't digest it. And I feel overwhelmed and I short circuit. And anytime my least favorite part of playing chamber music is when people go, let's just get together and read stuff. I'm like, I think I have a headache and can't play.
My lips are a little too chapped today. I don't know if I can play.
Like, please no, you'll see my vulnerable underbelly. And so I'm the worst sight reader ever. Give me someone else's reads on music that I know. What do you think?
Well, I would rather sight read because I don't normally like other people's reads unless they're like easier than what I play. I tend to play like a super light read setup. So I think I would rather sight read a concert. Honestly, I tend to do better on the first go around than the second.
I know tons of people like that.
Yeah. Like I tend to be more accurate on the sight reading. And then if I'm starting to like actually learn it, that's when I start making mistakes.
I'm so jealous.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a great sight reader, but I think I'd be better at sight reading a concert than playing a concert on someone else's reeds.
I'm just the worst. Although, in terms of reeds, bassoon reeds, I feel like have more forgiveness than oboe reeds.
That's probably true. What did our listeners say?
They said 59% would prefer to sight read and 41% would prefer to play on someone else's reeds. So slightly favoring the
really
sight read,
close.
but they're a little torn.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, this next one is really hard. Would you rather perform in a venue that's too hot or perform in a venue that's too cold?
I was thinking about it, and I think cold. Neither one is ideal. Physically, it's annoying. Intonation-wise, it's annoying. But I feel like I'd rather compensate for the stuff that happens when it's cold than I feel like when I'm hot, I'm just kind of stuck, festering in the heat. I don't know. What do you think?
I would agree. Number one, because I have a plastic top joint, so cold doesn't scare me. Number two, because I remember playing this rehearsal in a church, and somebody had complained about the air being like too aggressive, so they turned it off completely. And my reed blew up like a balloon, and it was miserable.
Especially in those humid environments.
Yeah. So I think, yeah, too cold for sure.
Well, the listeners disagree with us. 57% would prefer a hot environment and 43 would prefer the cold. So again, they're still pretty divided.
I also had the experience once of the hall was really cold and one of my pads just popped right off.
My whisper keypad popped off yesterday, not because of temperature, just because it was a bit having a renegade moment. And so we're going to get that fixed. All right, last question. Would you rather perform only early music for the rest of your life or perform only new music for the rest of your life?
I'm going to say new if I had to choose. I like both, but I think new music is fun and exciting.
I would also choose new, and I do not like both. Well, I have I have the utmost respect for early music and early musicians. I know I've admitted before that it's not it's not a strength. And because I know there's such strong expertise in our field within that avenue, I feel like such an insecure moron when it comes to a lot of early stuff.
I totally get that. You're like, oh, they're judging me.
Yes. Is this the right type of ornament? Are there too many? Are there too few? Help. It's not an text. I'm sorry.
It has an editor.
Well, the listeners slightly agreed with us. 54% said they would prefer only new music. 46, though, going with the early. And again, I'd be interested in the instrument breakdown on that if we.
Yeah, because your early music is a lot of continuo.
That's right. Oh, that's another reason other than my fear. Yeah, let's go with that instead.
That was such a good game. Thank you for putting that together. I love that.
Yeah, that was so much fun. If you have other would you rather questions you want us to play, send them on in. Maybe we'll do another round in an upcoming episode.
Yeah, let's do it. All right, let's get into this interview.
Ugly Duckling Oboes is dedicated to the development of young oboe players. They provide quality handmade oboe reeds, private lessons, and high-quality oboe sales, rentals, and consignments. The oboes that they rent are conservatory mechanism oboes that include the left-hand F key and low B flat key. All are maintained by oboe-specific technicians. In-person lessons are available, as well as virtual lessons for students who live outside the geographic area or have transportation and scheduling challenges. They also offer online college audition coaching for high school juniors and seniors who plan to audition to be music majors. Visit uglyducklingoboes.com for more details on how you can set up yourself for success and sign up for their newsletter. That's uglyducklingoboes.com.
Consider buying your processed oboe and bassoon cane from those friendly folks over at Barton Cane. Processed with care and precision for your everyday reed-making needs. Take the pain and injury out of reed-making by letting Barton Cane do the hard, repetitive, boring stuff. Free up time for practicing, happy hours, hikes, baking, and spending time with friends and family. Barton Cane, here for you. Visit www.bartoncane.com.
We are so excited to welcome Kemp Jernigan, who teaches oboe at Hartt, to Double Reed Dish. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey guys, it's great to be here.
We always start the same way. We want to know what brought you to the magical world of double reed playing. So, how did you start on the oboe?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I started in the band like most other kids.
Where was
I
that?
started on the saxophone.
Where was that, Kim?
That was so I went to school in Gulf Shores, Alabama, and
Sorry,
I'm ignoring Galit.
Before we got started, everyone, I promised Kemp I would make fun of him from being from Gulf Shores, Alabama. I'm just kidding. I love you. Keep going.
She warned me. It's true. I knew that was coming. So I went to school proudly in Gulf Shores, Alabama, and I started in the band in Gulf Shores Middle School in 6th grade. I played the saxophone, and I had heard a rumor that there was, you're gonna like this, Jackie, that there was a bassoon being ordered that the band was going to get, and I really wanted to play the bassoon. This is a real story, actually, and I had asked the band director if I could play the bassoon, and he was like, "Yeah, absolutely." Actually, there's if you're interested, while we're waiting for the bassoon to come in, there is an oboe here. Nobody's playing the oboe, and it's just so funny. One of those random things that you decide to do when you're like 12 years old, it totally changes the course of your life. Like on a whim, I just thought, well, I don't know, the oboe's just there, why not just play it? It's kind of fun. Nobody else is playing it. I felt kind of special. And so that's how I got started on the oboe. Completely random. By the way, I never got to switch over to bassoon, in case you're wondering.
Did the band director hide the bassoon once it came in? We got someone on the oboe. We don't need him off the oboe.
He proudly gave it to one of my best friends, who we're still really close. And it's very sad. I always say that I'm a bassoon player trapped in an oboe player's body.
So, Kemp, what happened after that? What got you interested in being a career oboist?
That's a great question. For me, my journey was a little wandering. I grew up in a really musical family, although nobody was a musician, for a profession. But my parents are both really musical. We have a lot of extended family. All of them, play different kinds of instruments. So for me, I always grew up around musicians and music lovers, people who just love to either play music or talk about music. It was always around. I had no strict classical music upbringing at all. That was never something that my parents necessarily cared about one way or the other. I think they just recognized at an early age that I loved to play music, and so they kind of pushed me to go down that path. Like I mentioned, started off in the band, and then my parents a couple years later were like, well, they're both from Mobile, Alabama, and there was like, there is still a youth orchestra there, and they thought, why not audition for this youth orchestra? And so I auditioned, I got in, and all of a sudden I was kind of playing in this youth orchestra in Mobile, and I think that certainly exposed me to a lot of different. To my first real orchestral rep, which I just didn't have a clue about. I had never played with strings before, obviously. So that was kind of my first taste, I think, playing classical music at all. For me, growing up, I played other instruments, and I was much more into, playing guitar and with my friends and singing and writing songs. And that's what I really loved to do early on. And for me, playing the oboe was something that was really fun, but it certainly wasn't my identity in any way. Most of my friends at Gulf Shores High School didn't even know that I did it. I went over to Mobile and played on Sunday afternoons in the youth orchestra, and it's like half the time, nobody even knew that I was doing it. So the way it kind of evolved was I thought that I could potentially go to school somewhere in maybe a different geographical part of the country. In a way, it was kind of my ticket to go do that, to go see different things or to go have different experiences. It wasn't necessarily because I was dreaming about playing the oboe when I was 14, 15, 16 years old. So that's how it got started. And then I don't know if I mentioned the story to you about how I met Lucarelli originally. But so about midway through my kind of high school years, I started to kind of think maybe I could try to go to school to play the oboe. Growing up in Gulf Shores, I didn't really have a ton of exposure outside of playing in the youth orchestra. Now, that is how I got to meet Patty Malone, who you certainly knew quite well. And so I would kind of go and take lessons with her here and there over at Hattiesburg, or sometimes I'd meet her before or after a Mobile Symphony rehearsal. And so I was able to rack her brain a little bit about, who to contact or to try to go take a lesson with. But I had no clue what I was doing. And that was really sporadic in terms of when I was really able to have those kind of lessons. So it was really up to me and to my parents to try to figure out what the heck to do. So I thought that if I sent a recording of my playing to just a bunch of different teachers, maybe I would hear something back. I mean, because at that point, I still had no idea how I compared to other kids who played the oboe outside of Mobile. I just had no clue. And quite honestly, I didn't want to waste their time. So I made some kind of a recording, made a CD at that point. You still made CDs to send them, to mail them out. And I remember I mailed them to a bunch of teachers. I just looked up, my parents and I were just like looking up teachers all across the country. And I think there might've been a handful that got back to me. And one of those people was Bert Lucarelli. And the funny way that I even got to know about him, it shows you how much I knew at that point, was I was literally Googling oboe teachers because I had no clue what to do and what resource. I didn't have one. I mean, it was just totally by chance. And this one name kept popping up over and over again. And my mom and I started to kind of laugh to ourselves. And I remember us kind of being like, maybe we should just email this guy. Like, who is this guy? His name kept popping up. And I sent him an email and mailed him my CD of my playing. And he was one of the very few people that got back to me. And I didn't even, how can you possibly appreciate it at the time when there's just so much you don't know at 17? But when I think now to how busy he was, not just with students, but he was still playing, to even take the time to listen or to respond to an email at all. With each passing year, it means more and more. And that wasn't something that he just did that one time. I mean, that's such kind of that's just who he is. Obviously, obviously you know that.
Yeah.
So that's how all of that happened. I just started off in the band. And so many things happened kind of by chance. And I was lucky enough and still am, obviously, to meet people who really supported me and continued to do so. And really showed me early on how those relationships are so special and vital for what we do.
I love that.
So the oboe was originally kind of a ticket to see a world bigger than you'd been exposed to, but somewhere along the way, the decision to pursue a professional path entered your mind. So can we hear about your training, educational journey, and deciding to pursue oboe professionally?
Sure. So really, by the time I guess I didn't mention, but I studied with Lucarelli at Hartt for my undergrad. And I had made it through, it was probably about a year or a year and a half of, this is maybe midway through my sophomore year. And I remember Lucarelli really having a pretty stern conversation with me, and just being really frank about how I really wasn't improving nearly as much as I should be. And he was right. I mean, I think I was enjoying living in the Northeast and kind of exploring and being in college. And I just, at that point, I had other priorities, to be quite honest. And I remember after that conversation, I went home for winter break that year of my sophomore year, and really kind of having a conversation with myself about, this was kind of a moment of a turning point one way or the other in terms of, am I really going to do this? Because if I do, I really need to be serious about it for the first time. Or it's time to, maybe make some decisions and go in a different direction. So for me, I decided to go for it. I think also too, the idea of him being disappointed in any way was just so upsetting. Like, I think it's like with a parent or grandparent or whoever, somebody who you love so much. I mean, the idea that they could be disappointed in you, it was just, that was so difficult. And I never wanted to feel that way again. So that was part of it. But I remember over that break, I started thinking like, okay, maybe I should look into like summer programs, and, maybe I should really try to get this thing going. And so this is kind of another moment that just like happened totally by chance. And I think some of these moments happened because I just didn't know enough still at that point to know, like, should I even apply for this or not? But I applied and got into when it was still happening, the Banff master classes in Banff, Canada. And at the time, Richard Kilmer was running the oboe portion. And I remember thinking, again, shows you how much I still knew at that point. I was like, that sounds like a great place to be for 3 weeks. That sounds really beautiful. And, that would be really nice to study, with him for 3 weeks. And so I just sent in a tape and I got in. And I remember thinking like, I got into this place. Like, okay, but that moment really was the turning point for me. Because I came back that semester in the spring. This is spring of 2010, really focused. I got into that festival, and then that summer for me really kind of changed everything in terms of just how I approached playing the oboe and how I thought of myself, and kind of really thinking like, okay, I really want to try to go do this. And really that was because I was exposed really for the first time to just unbelievable oboe playing. And these kids not only were just fantastic, but they were so great. They were just great people. And so for the first time, I could really identify with other kids who were about my age, who were leaps and bounds, obviously, above me in terms of just the level. And so it really gave me something to aspire to. And that was really it for me in terms of the kind of the hook, And so from there, that's kind of, that was the green light for me. And I was able to kind of keep up with them, obviously, and those are friendships that I still have. But I saw what they were doing and what they were accomplishing, and it was so exciting for me to kind of watch, and I wanted to do that too. And so that was really that was a turning point. But everybody obviously has a different point where that happens for them, and for me, that was when I was 20 years old. Which for most people you would consider that to be relatively old in terms of making that decision. But for me, it was a long journey to get there. But I was happy that it just came at the perfect time.
What happened after Hartt? What was your journey post-graduation?
Yeah, so my senior year, I thought, okay, I've improved X amount. I've kind of crossed these thresholds in terms of summer programs. I went to Banff. The next year I was at Norfolk, the Norfolk Chamber Music Festival, that kind of like the Yale Summer School. And I remember thinking, okay, I'm crossing these thresholds. I started to kind of create these thresholds to cross, to prove to myself that this was still a good idea. And I felt like I was going in the right direction, and I really wanted to go to a serious master's program. So I applied to the top master's programs and got rejected by all of them. And that was a really great lesson, because I remember getting to May of my senior year, everybody's graduating, all my friends are going on to grad school or wherever else. And I remember being like completely lost, completely. I had never faced rejection like that. And this was after I'd kind of given myself this permission of like, okay, like really commit to this. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, like I'm like twiddling my thumbs in May, trying to figure out what am I going to do? Mm-hmm. So, basically, and this is kind of a timing thing, Lucarelli had been teaching at SUNY Purchase for a long time. And he had just retired from there. He was leaving. And I remember having a conversation with him where I was quite frankly trying to figure out what to do. And he was like, there's this guy who is going to start teaching at Purchase in the fall. His name's James Austin Smith. And I think you'd be a really good fit. He's young. He's just getting going in New York. And I think you would like him a lot. Now, I had met him a couple of times because he's from the area and he came to Hartt a little bit to give a couple of classes. So I knew him. But I went to New York, had a lesson with him, loved him, and thought, well, I mean, it's not like I have, all of these options, for the fall. Not only that, but this feels actually like a really great thing. And so I went to SUNY Purchase for what they consider it's a performance certificate, which is in between undergraduate and a master's degree. Mm-hmm. And that was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. For a multitude of reasons. But the first thing is that was my first time studying with a teacher who was, he was just in a totally different phase of his life. He had just really started to get going in New York. And when I say get going in New York, I mean, he kind of was playing everywhere. And I could really relate to him. He was kind of the cool older brother that I had never had. And I just thought he was such a great person and a great player. And he was just really motivating for me. And I went in that year and I told him really what I was wanting to accomplish. And in terms of getting to, getting to graduate school. And so he and I were really on the same page. And that was the most productive year of school I had. It was amazing. And growing up in Alabama and now living at that point, I was in Westchester, which was Purchase is only about 30 minutes or so north of New York City. So for the first time, I was able to be exposed to everything happening in New York. And that degree doesn't have a lot of, there's like no really academic rigor to it. It's really about coming in and kind of honing what you're doing. And so it was a lot of playing. And so I had a lot of time. I had a lot of time to go see all different kinds of performances and concerts and meet all different kinds of interesting people. And so for me, that was such a stimulating year. But getting back kind of to that original point, which was, it was the best thing that could have happened to me because I had never faced rejection like that in my life. Mm-hmm. And at the time just wondering about a multitude of things. But when I could get to the other side of it, and then years later, realizing that was the best thing that could have ever happened to me simply because I grew so much that year. I think also too, like having explained to you guys kind of like where I grew up and my classical music upbringing or lack thereof, I was probably a year behind anyway. Mm-hmm. So I think I needed that year. And Luke really ended up kind of confirming this too, but I really needed that year, I think, to develop, I think a little bit more. And James has been a confidant of mine and somebody who I feel really close with. And that year, I met Tara Helen O'Connor, who's an amazing flute player in New York, who runs the division, the classical division at Hartt at Purchase. And she's the reason that I got that job to teach at Purchase. So totally by chance, totally random, a moment in time that I thought like everything was going wrong. And then it seemed like that was the perfect thing for me. And with each passing year, it proves that it was the right thing. So from there, I ended up going to Yale for grad school, which was amazing. But I finally made it there. It was kind of a convoluted journey, but I did make it there.
Thank you so much for sharing that, because at the time, it was probably so incredibly painful. And putting myself in your shoes, I would have been so upset and felt so lost and confused and disappointed and, it just seems like rife for existential crisis. And you took it and you turned it into the best thing that could have happened to you. And kudos to you. That's a testament to your great attitude.
Well, it was hard. I mean, there's no way around it. It was really hard. But I think now teaching at Purchase and teaching at Hartt and having students who inevitably go through difficult situations and inevitably, go through rejection like all of us do, I'm able to talk about that particular moment in my life every year with at least one student.
Mm-hmm.
And to explain that kind of rejection or that feeling, number one, it's universal, right? It happens in all different kinds of fields, all different kinds of people. But I think that it also is just, it's a part of I mean, of being a person. Also, of course, in our field, we just face a lot of rejection. It's just part of what we do. And at that point, it felt so foreign. I had never experienced that before, but you start to realize as the years go on, that's just kind of a part of getting where you need to be. And I think that comes obviously with age and experience, but it always makes me feel good to know that I can talk to so many students every year about that, and to kind of, it's not just lip service, you know what I mean? It's like, I've really done this. It's not just me saying like, oh, that's okay, it'll get better, or there's something like that that's slightly empty. It's, I can say, no, this actually has happened to me, and I can explain to you, why it was the best thing that could have happened, or something along those lines. And it makes me feel really good that like that moment in time for me continues to kind of be used for good, because I think that's really, important.
Jackie, do you mind if I share the advice you gave me one time after I screwed up royally in a recital and I called you afterwards?
Go for it. I don't remember what I said, but
so I was really upset. I had made this incredibly awful mistake in a recital, and I called Jackie afterwards. I was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe I did that." And she said, I was like, "This is the end of the world." And she said, "No, we wear perfection and perfectionism like a backpack full of bricks. And you just took a brick out of someone else's backpack. And that's what you do too. Like, you took this thing that really hurt you at the time, and you turned it into a way to lighten the load for other people."
That's a great way of, I never really thought about it that way. But I think that's a really great way of putting it. And I think also too, right? Like if somebody, if a student was talking to me about some kind of rejection that they were experiencing, me at 32 would laugh, thinking of I would be like, this person's 22 years old. Like you're just getting going. And so but of course, when we're going through it, it obviously is a much bigger deal to us. It's our life, but, to think about feeling that way at 22, it's like, you have your entire life ahead of you. But I remember, getting to that point, and then honestly, again, leaving grad school, it actually in a way is such a freeing moment, because you feel like anything at this point moving forward is possible. There's a freedom, I think, to when you do go through that. And these kind of certain goals that you have set that maybe you don't reach, you have to reset and find new goals, or maybe it's the same goal, but it takes a little bit longer. There is a freedom to that when you're kind of knocked off path a little bit, and then you do have to get creative in a way. And I think there is beauty to that. I think it's not the easiest thing that we go through, but I do think that it's in a way it's vital, to our development as people.
Absolutely. And I agree with you, Dilip, that it's so important for us to discuss, especially from the other side. Like, I remember being in school, and one of my studio mates was being very ambitious in applying for graduate study. And, someone acknowledged, that's really ambitious. What if you don't get in anywhere? And I remember he said, well, if I can't get into these schools, then I'm not viable as a professional, and I should find something else to do. And that's literally what he thought. Like, oh, this is a litmus test of if I can do this. And it's like, yeah, you look back from the other side and it's like, no, there's so many things, also like maybe there's no openings or, this, that, like there's so many things that factor into that. And yes, we can write such significance that's not there. Or even like you said, if it's there at the time, it just means not this right now. It doesn't mean like, no, not you. This isn't for you. And so I think it's so important for us to have these conversations because someone's listening, and it's March, the letters are starting to come in, and someone's listening right now who's at least wondering. And I think it's really good. I applaud your vulnerability in sharing that with us. But you did get to the other side. So can you share about embarking on your professional journey and how you got to where you are today?
That was a beautiful segue. I was wondering how you were going to. I was like, do we go darker now, or like?
Haven't you heard how profound I am? I make great brick backpack metaphors.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, if we could just take a moment, let me stare out the window for a few minutes and just think about all the things you said. I did eventually end up going to Yale, and which was wonderful. And, in a way, actually, that was kind of funny enough. Not every moment in my life was difficult, but I remember getting there and starting. And in a way, that was actually kind of a difficult moment because I had spent so long trying to get to this specific place and then being there. And I remember kind of like processing that. And then realizing like, oh, a master's degree is 2 years. Like I got through like most of my first year and was like, oh my God, I'm like graduating in a year basically. And kind of going through this whole, existential crisis all over again and figuring out, okay, what am I doing now? And, but I did, kind of early on start to pick up some work in New York a little bit. And this was from friends of mine who were a little bit older than me, who, the way it goes is just, randomly giving somebody your name, or putting your name on a list or something like that. But I started to kind of play here and there with different groups and meet new people. And so, all of my teachers were people who I wanted to emulate, not because they were my teachers, but just because I respected them and still do so much, just as people, but also the way they created their own particular lives and careers. And whether that was Lou Corelli, whether that was James, whether that was Steve Taylor, I just admired them then and admire them now so much as just kind of, yes, as oboe players, but as artists. And so I wanted to be like them. I mean, quite frankly. And so I thought, okay, well, I'm picking up work a little bit in New York. I think I want to give this a go for a little while. And this was kind of one of those moments too, where I thought, if this doesn't work out, I can go in a different direction, but I really want to see if I can give this a shot. And my wife, who's, we're the same age, she graduated grad school at the same time as I did. This was, to put dates on this, this was spring of 2015. And, of course, I'm like no help in terms of geography and like where we're going to go. And my wife is thankfully not a musician, for the record. She's a school psychologist. And, so we met in Connecticut. We met at University of Hartford, our freshman year. And so she got her license in Connecticut, and we thought for sure we would stay in Connecticut. It's just like what we're going to do. And then we subletted an apartment over the summer. Weeks are going by, still aren't sure. And then she gets a job in New Jersey. And I was like, oh, New Jersey. Okay. Well, I hear New Jersey's beautiful this time of year. Let's move to New Jersey. So she's from New Jersey, for the record. So like for her, this was not a shock, but for me, this was quite a shock.
I'm going to Jersey.
Yeah. I mean, I know this is an audio medium, but if you can hear hearing my voice, this does like not, seem like a natural fit for New Jersey. But here we are 7 years later and about to raise a child in New Jersey. So that was what I dreamed of growing up in Alabama. So, we moved to New Jersey, and all I really wanted to do was just be close to New York and to pick up work when I could and to see if I can do this. So this was kind of another threshold for me. It was like, okay, let's see if I can I mean, this sounds really funny, but like, let's see if I can pay my rent by playing the oboe. I want to see if I can do that. Which, guys, for the record, like suburban New Jersey, rent is quite high. All right, so that was a lofty challenge. You know, I mean, it wasn't. Yeah, I mean, this was hard. I knew this was going to be hard, and I think I was really lucky because of these people who were looking out for me. Yes, my teachers, but also people who I had met along the way. And so that first year was super tough, obviously. There were lots of kind of starts and stops, but that was a pretty amazing year to all of a sudden kind of be existing in New York and just to be picking up work, and everything was so new, and you're meeting so many kinds of people and playing all different kinds of things. And it was just a really beautiful time. And it was scary, obviously, because you're thinking like, after all of this, you know, school and studying and work, like, is this really going to happen? But I think for me, number one, I just loved the idea of kind of existing in this way, and having this kind of life in this area. And I don't know. I mean, I love a good show, and New York's just the ultimate show, you know, like at the end of the day. And so that's what keeps me hooked even now. But yeah, so it was total leap of faith. I remember like having a candid conversation with a confidant about like, I think I'm going to move to New York and try to give this a go. And then being like, maybe you should like, you know, start a doctorate, or like, you know, like to have some safety net, like have some community. And which I totally understand now, looking back, like why they would recommend that. I mean, obvious reasons. I think for me, I was just at a point where I really wanted to prove to myself if I could do this or not. And I got really lucky because there were people out there to kind of look out for me, and still look out for me. And so that's how that got started. So I was picking up work in while I was living in New Haven, going back and forth, and then kind of just took the plunge and started picking up work. And, you know, one thing leads to another. It's kind of crazy how that happens.
So freelancing seems like such a like multifaceted skill set, like, you know, logistically, interpersonally, networking, all that type of stuff. And I wonder if you could, you know, kind of talk about your experiences or advice that you have gained along the way for, you know, making it work by investing in many different areas in building your career.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, and the kind of ultimate question, I think, when it comes to this particular way of existing. I think that to put it as simply as possible, I think, and this isn't to say that I have mastered this by any means, but this was good advice, I think, that I got years before when I was still in school, and what I really tried to remember and live by. But, you know, I can say from my perspective, when I play with people, with colleagues, friends, whatever, you know, you want to play. Obviously, like, it's great to play music at a high level, like that is certainly always the goal for all of us. But, you know, you also want to play music with people who you love to spend time with. Like, freelancing also is like touring. Like, who do you want to travel with? Like, who do you want to be in tough situations with? Early mornings, late nights, stuck in traffic. You know, like, yes, of course, it is about the playing and playing as well as you possibly can. But and this isn't just with freelancing. This is just I think our way of life in general. It's also about, you know, we're in the people business. Mm-hmm. We interact with people every day, not just if you're a teacher, but as musicians. How do you interact with people in rehearsals? I mean, the list it's endless in terms of your interaction with people. How do you make people feel? Because yes, of course, like, again, getting back to the playing, like, that always has to kind of speak for itself. But most of the time, like, if you maybe don't play as well as you'd want to or whatever, like, those things eventually even out. But it's like, the way you make people feel lasts forever. And I think that at the end of the day, that will separate you from other people. Mm-hmm. To be able to play well, but also to, I think, be somebody, a colleague who people want to be around. that's a beautiful thing. And that to me, looking at all the people who are really, I think, successful, they have that quality. And that's not a coincidence, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So can I take a left turn and ask you about your read making?
Oh God. I knew it was coming. This is a double read podcast after all.
Yes.
I guess. Read making. Do people still make reads?
Suckers.
Yeah, maybe
This
someday.
well.
Kemp, will you just can you be in charge of AI read making? Can we do that?
Oh my God. That's fine. That's fine. I think the way to start out is if you could send me all of your reads first. I'll get back to you.
All I need is 5 a month, and that will be great research.
Yeah, we don't ask for much. We really don't. We're simple people.
What's your read making setup? What's important to you in your reads?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, I think that oh gosh, where do I begin? I think that the first thing is, the Northeast, the weather is constantly, I mean, the pendulum of weather, temperature, humidity, dryness it goes from one extreme in January, February to the other in August. Mm-hmm. So I mean, it's literally 100 degrees, no kidding. I mean, it's unbelievable. So I think that you have to be able to, and this sounds really obvious, but to be able to make reads in different climates, period. So I think that you have to be able to adapt and adjust accordingly because it's constantly changing. I mean, today is what's the date, guys? The 16th, March 16th. So it snowed yesterday and it will be 80 degrees in the next 6 to 8 weeks, for sure. Right. So it's changing all of the time. So I think that that's kind of the first general thing that I always have to keep in mind, and was a big adjustment for me when I moved to the Northeast all those years ago. I think that obviously, I mean, I certainly need stability. I think that I have to have something that I can really work around in that way. If I'm fighting it, you just exhaust yourself. So I think that's kind of the first thing that I'm looking for. And Glee, you and I obviously are cut from the same cloth. So I think that in a lot of ways, I think I'll probably end up repeating stuff that maybe you've certainly heard from teachers over the years.
Please do.
I mean, yeah. So I mean, that's really the first thing. And in terms of, what I'm thinking about is stability. I mean, I think that I also, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong. It's because I usually am trying to beat traffic or go somewhere. I also, full disclosure, don't have a lot of time. So I have to be extremely efficient in what I do. So I also have to make reads very quickly. I have to make them very quickly. Earmuffs to people who shouldn't be hearing that. But it's true. I sit down and I need to make a read. I need to do it. Maybe I have a day off or 2 days off, whatever. During certain times of the year, right now, there's just, and you guys know, and there's just there's no time. So you have to be super efficient when you have the time. Part of my policy is just making reads as often as you can. Newsflash. You know what I mean? Yeah, I'm here all day for groundbreaking news, but it's but it's true, I think some people truthfully are gifted read makers, and I am not one of them. So the only way to keep up, to make sure that I'm keeping up, is to just do it as often as I can. So if I don't shape cane for a month, I'm not saying I never go that long, but a few weeks, and I go back to it, I'm oh my God, I'm just destroying it. Or I come back to, if I made reads in a couple of weeks and I come back to it and my knives are weird, and I'm just, it's everything gets thrown off. And some people I know never skip a beat, but I can't do that. I can't. So for me, it's just about, I think, staying extremely regular with my, with read making, and making sure that I'm kind of being conscientious with that. That seems to solve the problem here. Now, again, it doesn't always, isn't always possible, but for me, I think that's something that I kind of segue into with teaching, which is, I obviously you guys know this even better than I do, with students who I don't know, they're navigating crazy schedules maybe for the first time in their life, and they come into a lesson and they're like, oh, I didn't have any time, this week to make reads, or I haven't had time in the past 2 weeks to like really do any kind of read making or practice or whatever. And as you obviously know, like I'm not one to scold anybody. I use my life as an example of like, look, I'll tell you what I have going on right now. And this is how I'm navigating through that with practicing and read making. Not to say that like my life's harder, because it's not. It's simply to say that like this actually doesn't, like this schedule that you're navigating, it doesn't get easier. Like not in a bad way. It's just like let's kind of sift through this now, because this is what part of being a musician's like. Because this is how it is. And I think that when you're kind of going through school, it's like people focus a lot on how many hours a day are you practicing, but we're not talking as much about like how are you practicing the right way? Are you making like you're devoting your read making time the right way? So it's kind of about doing it the right way. But anyway, regardless, I try to use that in teaching to help students, kind of learn that I go through this too. I still go through this all the time, and it's about, I think, being kind of really good with the time that we have.
1,000%.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about the Sound Mind Ensemble?
Oh yeah. So truthfully, Sound Mind hasn't played in a little while, but we love each other very much, and we're together all the time. So, but the way this started really was, we're all really good friends. So we just wanted an opportunity to play together. I think that's usually how the best groups start, is that you just love being together. You love spending time together. You love playing music together. You love doing things together. And I think I admire that group and those people who make up that group so much. Because they're brilliant, they're talented, they're funny. They're people who I want to be around, and who I want to constantly learn from. That's how that got started. So it's, if you like look at the website, or if you see videos, it is it started out as a wind quintet. But the goal has always been, and will continue to be, to make it more of a collective, with a kind of more flexible roster, which you certainly see a lot of now. That's like not necessarily a new idea, but I think for us to be able to have, I think a rotating roster of people, to be able to play all different kinds of repertoire in all different kinds of setting, that's always been the goal. But that really is what that group's about. It's about really good friends being together and playing music. And I think that, that usually leads to longevity. And when I see, what my colleagues in that group are doing now, and continue to do, they're just amazing. And it just reaffirms why I love them in the first place, because they're all just doing such amazing things. They're great. Plus our text chain is kind of amazing. So that's really the biggest benefit.
Can confirm it's fun to do things with your friends.
Yeah. Write that down.
I find it very overrated.
I quit.
This is a good time for me to just drop it and let you guys go.
I'm meaning to talk to you about something.
Yeah. This is our last double read podcast.
Anyway, back to you, Kemp. Can you share with us a favorite memory from a past performance? This could be like a meaningful memory, or like maybe like a hilarious memory, or...
Yeah, that'd be great. So I mean, a couple things come to mind. I'll do the more kind of professional memory first, and then I'll end it with maybe a not so professional memory. But so I had survived my first year like existing in New York City, and out of nowhere, like a lot of my life is, like a random email will kind of just drop out of the sky from somebody who I don't know, asking me to do something, and I'm like, oh, I'll do that, I'm free. And I got asked to this. So this would be spring of 2016, May, June, touring with the Orpheus Chamber Orchestra in Japan, which I never played with Orpheus. And I certainly had never been to Japan. So I got to tour Japan with Orpheus for 2 weeks. And I mean, I just remember I'd never toured, period, anywhere, much less Japan.
This sounds very low stress to me. This sounds
It was so low stress. It was so easy, guys. That's what I'm here to tell you. And so I remember, like, I made it through the first. There were rehearsals for like 2 weeks in New York before this tour happened. So, like, I make it through the 2 weeks, relatively unscathed, and you get on a plane in JFK with the orchestra, and it's like 12 hours later you're in Tokyo, literally. And I just remember, like, I mean, there's not a whole lot I remember about the first few hours because I was so jet lagged, but I remember still being jet lagged and like trying to like get myself together. And I remember walking, they gave us like a day, to kind of like pull ourselves together. And then the second day that night, we had our first concert. So you're walking out at, the stage in Tokyo, looking around at this like packed place. I'd never played with Orpheus at all. So you're jet lagged, you're in a totally different country, you're playing with a group that you obviously just want to play super well with. Oh yeah. And guys, there's no conductor. So I can't just like glue myself to the conductor because they're not there. So I remember, like, also, this is a good story. It sounds like traumatizing. It was amazing. But I remember that first night, like, sitting back in my chair because I thought I was going to fall over. And I was like, I was totally freaking out. But that, it wasn't maybe necessarily one performance, but the entire tour, I think, was just like, it was just one of those points where, it totally changed. It changed my life. I remember thinking midway through this tour, there was so much uncertainty in my life. I remember thinking, I still don't know at this point if I'm going to be able to have a career doing this, but like, this sounds so cheesy. No one will ever be able to take this moment away from me.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking, no matter what I end up doing in my life, I'll have this. And that was such a beautiful moment because we go through so much doubt, and wondering about all different kinds of things in our lives. And I just remember this one beautiful kind of experience on a human level. I take the music totally out of it. Just being able to, again, as my ticket to go see different things, that was kind of a prime example of being able to like go all over, literally from one end to the other in Japan and to see that country. Otherwise, I probably never would have gone, and that to me was transformative. And I still think about that tour all the time, actually. I was able to go to Germany actually before COVID, which was like fall 2019, and do the same thing. But yeah, so I think that particular trip was like totally blew my mind. I still can't believe I got to do it. On a much like funnier and lighter note, last week, you can tell I've really evolved over the years. I was playing, so I'm a co-artistic director of this group called the Exponential Ensemble. And we had a concert last week. And again, very good friends with the people who also run this group. And there's a clarinetist who started it years ago. His name's Pascal Archer. And a great friend of mine, and he's one of the funniest people I've ever met. And we were playing a piece, and it's a really big moment, and it's like flute, oboe, clarinet, piano, and we're really going for it. And he goes to cue, and it's really loud, and he just squeaks so loud, and I started laughing so hard, and it's because, again, like, I don't laugh at people when they crack a note. By the way, just for the record, let the record show I don't do that. But it's because he's so funny that like that's all it took. And then of course it was immediately followed by complete silence, which. And I just want you to know that I had to literally stop myself. I was gasping for air. I was laughing so hard, and I had to turn. We're like in a semicircle, and my the audience was to my left, and I literally had to turn to my right, which of course was towards him, and to literally so the audience wouldn't see me laughing because I've never done that. I was laughing so hard, like horde, and that was last week.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for a young musician who aspires to have a career like yours?
For me, having really concrete goals that I could visualize helped. I think everybody's certainly different in terms of what obviously motivates them. For me, I think being able to really visualize things that I'm hoping to accomplish. It doesn't mean that I'll get there, but I think having that kind of visualization every day has been amazing. I think at the same time, being really open to the pleasant surprises that come along, because I think at the end of the day, number one, that's a big part of what I do constantly. Things that are kind of dropping out of the sky and adapting quickly, but also that's like what makes life interesting and beautiful and fun. And so I think it's a mix of that. I think to like understand kind of what you're going for and really visualizing that, but also being really open. And I think sometimes like that's always kind of a funny thing to me. I remember this as a student, but now like talking to students, like they certainly are very committed to like something that they want to do. But I think that what ends up happening that they need to work on sometimes is like being open to other like ideas when it comes to just like their life and career. And I think that sometimes just comes with time. But I think if you can, some of the most successful people I know are the people who are the most adaptive. So yes, we've certainly on this, latest edition of Double Redish, we have talked a lot about resiliency, which of course is, I think, the ultimate kind of quality that is helpful, but I think also being really adaptable, and not just navigating personalities, but specifically to your question, I think being adaptive to the way things unfold. And the better we can be at that, I think it makes things a lot easier. Let me tell you, it's not easy for me. I don't say this as a point of expertise. I say it because, if it's, if there's students out there listening, it's only because I'm a few steps ahead. And that's a valuable lesson that I've certainly learned, over the past few years.
Kemp, I always have such a great time with you. Thank you so much for joining us on Double Redish. This was a blast.
Guys, this is the best. I've listened to so many of these podcasts, and I can't believe I get to be on one. I'm so excited. Really, thank you both. Thank you both so much.
Hey everyone, we hope you enjoyed that episode. Thank you so much for joining us for another Double Redish, Double Read Fest. What a weirdo I am. Follow us on social media, like, rate, and review. We love ya. Galit, who's on the next episode?
We had the joy of talking with bassoonist Evan Kuhlman of the Los Angeles Philharmonic. Jackie, let's end this nerd parade.
Go make reads.